Good morning, everyone. This is already in March, but still it's like winter. Road is icy. Not many people could come, but I'm glad some people are here. From the end of January, almost 1 month, I had many travel. I stayed in California for about 2 weeks, and I visited 7 or 8 Zen centers, and I gave 7 lectures. And a few days later, after I came back here, I went to Austin, Texas, and I had a 7-day Genzo-e. I gave 11 lectures, not 9, 11 2-hour lectures on Shobo Genzo, Busho, or Buddha nature. That was one of the most difficult fascicles of Shobo Genzo. And I stayed here for 3 or 4 days, and I went to Iowa. California and Texas, it was like a spring or even early summer. But Iowa is really different world. Everything is covered with snow and ice. So I'm happy that period is over. Now until June, I have no travel, so I can stay here and practice with people in this town. Of course, it's nice to travel and meet many different people and share the teaching and practice, but it's also nice to stay in one place and practice together with the same people. Anyway, on Sundays, I have been talking on this text, Opening the Hand of Thought. The last time I talked on this text was January 19th, so more than a month ago. And after, since I was out of town, I asked, several people to give a Dharma talk. So I think you enjoyed their real English Dharma talk. Anyway, so I continue to talk on this text. This morning, I'd like to talk on the last paragraph of page 95. Let me read this paragraph. It said, of course, if a violet plant cannot produce even a small violet, it is unable to make seeds and continue its line. Nevertheless, when it blooms, it does so for no personal purpose. Just bringing forth flowers is its life. There is a passage in the Lotus Sutra that is, all things are the truth in themselves. In Zen, a similar expression is, a willow is green, a flower is red. In short, Buddhism as a religious teaching means manifesting the world of life in which a violet blooms as a violet and a rose as a rose. This section from page 89, section 6 of this text, entitled The World of Self Unfolds. The World of the Self Unfolds. This section is a translation of this booklet in Japanese. The title is Modern Civilization and Zazen. So Uchiyama Roshi discussed about the meaning of the Zen practice in the context of modern civilization. And first he said in this modern civilization, we work so hard to arrive to achieve the goal. It's always goal oriented and try to make development more sufficiency, and that is okay. But because of the science and technology developed so quickly, we cannot control the development. Rather, we become almost like a slave of the technology and the economy. And we lose this peace of mind. We are always trying to looking for something better and try to go somewhere better. So Uchiyama Roshi put Buddhism and Buddhist practice within this context, and what this practice can offer to the people in the modern society. And in a sense, Buddha's teaching is almost opposite of modern civilization. We always taught, Buddha taught, be here and now. Don't be pulled by our desires. No satisfaction right here, right now, as it is. So it's Buddhist teaching is almost the opposition of modern civilization. But Uchiyama Roshi mentioned, if we carelessly understand Buddhist teaching, it becomes, can I say, lazy. So he said, in his own expression, he said, modern civilization is crazy civilization. But if we not correctly understand Buddha's teaching, we may become foolish. So he used these two expressions, crazy and foolish, as an opposition. This is, we always chasing after something, and we don't see anything else. Only just go whatever the goal is. And in this expression, foolish means nothing mine, nothing care. I don't care anything. It's okay as it is. So why we have to work hard? That kind of attitude. But he said that is not what Buddha taught, to be foolish and lazy and just be as it is. But he Uchiyama Roshi want to find motivation or energy to work diligently, not crazy, diligent or diligence, without being pulled by desires. Buddha taught we should keep a small desire and knowing satisfaction and enjoy serenity, being quiet, stay quiet. And yet we should be diligent. What is the motivation or energy to allow us to be diligent without being pulled by desires? That is Fatto, not Dogen here, Uchiyama Roshi want to show us. What is that energy that free from our discriminating mind based on our desire? and also not become lazy. We work hard diligently, and yet for the sake of fulfilling our desire. Or how can we work diligently without, dissatisfaction? We need satisfaction, and yet we need to work diligently. In this structure, we feel, this is not right thing, right place. There is something lacking. Therefore, we need to achieve something. Then our life becomes better. Therefore, we work hard. Most of people in this modern society think we need money. So we work hard, then we get money, then we expect our life become better. But it does not necessarily our life we become more happy, because whatever we achieved, we have more desires. So within this satisfaction, there's no goal, no end. Our desire grow bigger and larger, and we cannot eliminate this dissatisfaction, no matter how much we establish and go this direction. So we need to know satisfaction, and yet we need to work hard or diligently. What is this motivation or energy that allows us to be diligent? That is one of the virtues in Buddhism, in the Eightfold Noble Path, or 6 parameters in whatever Buddhist teachings. Diligence is very important. And yet Buddha taught we should keep our desires, few or small. So without desire, how can we work diligently? What is this energy? That is what Okumura Roshi is trying to discuss here. And in the previous paragraphs, in the same page, he raised a question. Not a question, but he said, in order that our discussion not remain abstract, let us turn back to the concrete everyday world. And said, for instance, why do we work? Why do we work? Usually we work because we feel we lack something, because of dissatisfaction or kind of hatred or anger about current situation, or greed to the future, to something we want. So this structure of our life is based on 3 poisonous mind. That is greed, we want more and more, or dislike, hatred, or this anger about the current situation. And according to Buddha's teaching, this way of life is based on ignorance. So this way of life creates samsara, and our life is always dissatisfactory. And that is what suffering or within samsara means. So our modern civilization is really samsara. Then it's so that is why Okumura Roshi raised this question. Why do we work? And we could say we work in order to eat. It means to bring food to the table, or to better our standard of living, or to become famous, those kind of things. But Okumura Roshi said, however, all of these responses originate out of our own personal thoughts and desires, and not from the life force itself. So he put this word or concept, life force. This way of life is based on our discrimination and desire. But he want to introduce this idea of life force. And he, in the next paragraph, he said, what is life force means? And in order to use a familiar example for the Western people, he quote from a Bible about the lily in the field. He said, the lily blooming in the field. Why does it bloom? It does not bloom for any particular purpose. It blooms solely because it has been given life. So the plants grow. It's not for the personal, individual purpose, but it grows to manifest its own life force. And he quotes from the Bible, consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin, and yet I say unto you that even Solomon, the King Solomon, in all his glory, was not arrayed like one of these. So those small flowers, small plants bloom beautiful flowers, and their beauty is much, much more beautiful than the man-made, decoration based on the power or economy or desire. So that is what life force means according to Okumura Roshi. And so what Okumura Roshi is trying to say is the life force, the power or energy or motivation that allow us to live and work diligently without being pulled by personal desire is this life force that is much deeper than our thinking, the thinking on which our desire is based. So Okumura Roshi is basically talking about thinking mind. And life force. Thinking mind is our head or brain. And we think what we think is me. But he said that is not real I or true self. We create the self-image of me or I, and the thought came, my thought is like myself or my kind of a Lord. So we always follow the thought came from this I. But according to Buddhist teaching and also Okumura Roshi, this is illusion. Actually, there's no such I, fixed I. But what allows us to even think in this way, it came from our life force that is much deeper and broader. And in my understanding, what he's talking about is, as I always draw, we are living or existing as a part of this Indra's net. And this way of thinking is how we see from this point and seeing others. And in this case, we become subject and other things become object. And there's a separation. And subject encounter with object and make a definition or make an image and evaluate these things and take actions. So there's a separation between subject and object. But in the case of life or true self, we are simply part of it. And so life force is much broader. As a true self, Okumura Roshi or Shōhaku use the example such as universal self. That is the self connected with all beings within this network. But when we, in our mind, when we think, we can think always in this way. There's a separation between me and the others. So we don't need to negate, and we cannot negate or eliminate this way of thinking. So how can we work together, work on this structure? This structure means we are living within as a part of this Indra's net, and yet within our mind we always create something self-centered, and we think this is me. So how can we, how can I say, make our life more kind of healthy? And what Okumura Roshi is saying is this thought, discriminating mind or thinking is part of this life. So when we see this structure and how this way of separation and we separate ourselves from other beings and we try to make a connection, kind of a man-made connection by evaluating these things. If I think I like this one, I want to make this my possession. If I hate that thing, I try to keep away. That kind of things is always happening. And we cannot live without that function also. So in order to make our life healthy, we have to understand the connection or relation between this I and this called true or universal self. That is this entirety of interconnectedness. How this is created by this thing, from this thing. So that I think that is a point of our understanding of our own life. Usually, I think, this thinking is the owner of this body and mind. But actually, there's no such owner of body and mind. Body and mind that is connected with all beings is only there. And yet, within our brain, we create, this world. So we need to understand how this is created and why we think. We think this I is the owner of this body and mind. And we need to turn it over, because life is much deeper and broader, and our brain is part of it. But we think, I own this body and mind, and we think we own this world, and everything within this world is a kind of a resource we can use in the way we can become happy. That is, I think, a very basic upside down way of viewing things. And our Zazen, in my understanding, our Zazen allow us to turn it around and see, this is kind of fiction. or illusion. And this is more like really happening. So this turning around our upside down way of viewing things is our practice. And in our tradition, this Zazen is the kind of a pivotal point of this turning around by letting go of thought. Thought is always self-centered, and this came from our karmic consciousness. By letting go, we negate everything come from our karmic consciousness. Just let go. We don't take any action based on those thoughts during the Zen. So this is a complete negation of thought from karmic consciousness. And yet we don't fight against them, or we don't kill them, or we not try to eliminate them. Thoughts are coming and going, but we don't think. This is a kind of strange thing, but I think you understand what I mean from your experience of Zazen. That is how we become, how can I say, turn it over and put our thought on the basis of our life instead of I own my life. So it's very subtle difference and a little, tiny difference. But this tiny little difference, I think, makes a great difference in the way we live. In that sense, we negate everything we thought, we think, and yet we also embrace everything we think. So we don't negate anything in a sense, and we don't affirm anything. Just be as it is. So in our Zazen, by letting go of thought, we become free from this structure. And yet this structure is not killed. It still works, but we see this is a fiction. That's all what we do. But our Zazen is not thinking about that. If we think about that, it's still we return to this structure. And within Zazen, I think, this is larger than this one. This is what I'm doing right now, making these two as a concept. And this is much deeper and broader, and this is smaller or restricted. That is what we do when we think or talk. But in our Zazen, we actually do it instead of thinking about it. That is why Zazen is very, I think, special and unique and precious. And when we, stand up from our Zazen and go outside, we have to start to think and make choice, which is a better way to live within this structure. Anyway, that is the point of what Okumura is discussing here, in my understanding. And I start to talk on this paragraph. Of course, if a violent plant cannot produce even a small violet, it is unable to make seeds and continue its life, its line. So he's still talking about the tiny plants. So, the plants, in this case, violet, need to work diligently to bloom the violet flower. Otherwise, we become lifeless and become foolish. So we work diligently to live as human beings. And in this case, violet work hard to grow and bloom violet flowers. Nevertheless, when it blooms, it does so for no personal reasons. The flowers, the plant grow and work hard. If there's some obstruct, try to avoid the obstruct and grow toward the sun. Always grow toward the sunlight. To do so, I think plant needs a patience and diligence. But this plant work in that way, not because of their personal desire or thinking. And what Okumura Roshi is saying is, we need our life is the same thing, but difference is we have ability to think, and we can think something it's not true or it's not reality. We can create so many fictions, and somehow we think fiction is more true, more real than reality. That is a problem. If we are free from this, grasping to the fiction, self-centered fiction, then this ability is very important and precious. If we don't have ability to think what is not in front of our eyes, then we cannot write a poem. We cannot, make stories, and we cannot make movies. All those, we cannot have visions or plans for the future. All those, actions make us human. So we don't need to kill them, but we should see that is fiction. If we see these are fiction, then we are not deceived by them, but we can use it, and we can be friends with the fiction stories, and we can study or learn many things from fictions, from the stories or movies or any information from any mass media. But if we think they are true, that is a problem. So those plant is just bringing forth flowers is its life. There is a passage in the Lotus Sutra that reads, all things are the truth in themselves. In the previous paragraph, he quotes from the Bible, but he introduced a Buddhist teaching about the same thing. That is, in this translation, it said, all things are the truth in themselves. This is a translation of the expression appeared in the Lotus Sutra. That is Shōhaku. Shōho means all dharmas. In this case, dharmas mean beings or things. And this is true or genuine. And so it usually translated as a form. So sometimes this expression is translated as true form of all beings. But I translate this true reality. If we translate this so as form, it's confusion. Because about the Shōhaku, so true reality of all beings, the Lotus Sutras mentioned there are 10 suchness, Ju, Nyo, Ze. Nyo is suchness, and or like, and they is this. So nyoze literally means like this. Like this means such, or suchness in this case. So it said all beings have 10 suchness. And those 10 in the Lotus Sutra are I often talk about this, so maybe you already heard about this, but first one is so, second is show, so, tai, riki, sa, and in, nen, ka, ho, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10th is hon, matsu, kyo, to, so, sho, tai, riki, sa, in, en, but in, ka, and ho, hon, matsu, kyo, to. This so is same kanji, and this means form. So if we translate this so as a form, it's a confusion. And this does not mean form, as this means. So I translate this so as to reality. And each being has its own so is form or appearance. And sho is a nature. And tai is body or substance. And riki is energy or strength. And sa is function, work. So these first five is each and every being has its own unique form, nature, body, energy, and function. So each being has a uniqueness. And in is cause, and en is condition. Ka is fruits or result. And the four is the contents. I think these four mentioned refer to the connection. Each being which has a unique quality can exist only within a relation throughout space and time. And in and ka is a relation within time. Some cause often, the example often used is a seed. Seed is a cause, and fruits is result. So when seed is planted, it grows little by little, and when it fully matured, it has flowers and bear fruits. And this continue the next generation of the plants. This is how a plant works. So for this matured tree, seed is a cause. And for the seed, this matured tree, which bloom flowers and bear fruit, is result. So the in and ka, or cause and result, is a relation within time. And in and ho is a relation within space. That means other things within space. condition means, for example, uh, when this seed was planted, it doesn't start to grow unless it has sufficient humidity or temperature and air and sunlight. All those things or conditions help this seed to start to grow. So without conditions, that means from support from other beings within space at this moment, the seed cannot grow. And not only, this is an interesting point in Buddhist teaching, not only those things give positive support to this seed to grow, but also things, negative things that didn't happen also support this seed to grow. That means even though the seed is planted on the ground, if a bird come and eat the seed, then this seed can't grow. So, all the birds which didn't come to eat this seed support this seed to grow. That means not only the positive or active support, but also something negative didn't happen. That means everything, really everything, support this tiny seed to start to grow. So when we are immature, we need to receive support and help by all beings. But when the tree becomes fully matured, then through the flowers, when flower blooms, insect like bees are coming to get nectar, and they help the tree to spread the pollen. So there's a relation working together, supporting each other. And when the fruits is bared, we can eat. To offer the food is not the purpose of this life activity of this tree. The purpose or means of this activity is to continue this life. But somehow, this plant has something to offer to other beings. So when we are immature, we need help from other beings. And when we become matured, we can offer things to other beings. That is M and Ho. Ho recompense means, like for example, as a bodhisattva, when Shakyamuni practiced as a bodhisattva, his practice, his goal, the meaning of his activity is to awaken and become free from suffering. And when he did it, he accomplished the awakening. That is not the goal, but he started to teach. So, the goal of our life or the goal of our practice is not simply, continue the line of our life. Or the goal of our practice is not simply I become free from suffering, but when I become suffering, or at least when Shakyamuni became free from suffering, he started to teach. In the beginning, he had hesitation because it's too difficult. But anyway, he stood up from his zazen and walked to the deer park and started to teach. So that is what recompense means. That means practice, when we practice and become fully mature, then we become a teacher. We need to offer something. Or when we learn how to drive a car, the goal is to know how to drive. And when we get a license, then we can offer a ride to other people. So that is what this recompense means. It's not only just a fruit for this plant itself. This plant has something to offer. These are first 9 suchness. And the final thing, this Honmatsu Kyoto is translated as identity, ultimate identity from the beginning to the end. This from beginning to the end means from first 1 to 9. So what this means is these 9 things are not separate individual items, but this is simply one thing. So that means this is simply one thing. Within this, the network of interdependent origination, we are always connected throughout, time and space. That is how we live, or how we exist as a life. This is my understanding of the teaching of true reality of all beings. But kind of an interesting thing happened in Japan. In Japanese Buddhism, they don't read this expression, Shōhaku Jitsu, as a true reality of all beings. But here, they start to interpret this expression as all beings are true reality. For example, Dogen. He wrote one fascicle of Shobogenzo entitled Shōhaku Jitsu. And at the very beginning of this fascicle, he wrote, manifestation of Buddha ancestor is the completely penetrated true reality. This true reality is Jitsu. So the manifestation of Buddhas and ancestors is this penetrated true reality. And he continued, the true reality or Jitsu is all dharmas. So he said, Jitsu is Shōhaku. All being, true reality is nothing other than all beings. It's not a matter of true reality of all beings, but all beings are true reality, or true reality is all beings. And he continues, all beings are such a form, such a nature, such a body, such a mind, such a world, such clouds and rain, such walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, such anxiety, joy, movement, and stillness, such a staff and a whisk, such picking up a flower and breaking into a smile, such dharma transmission and prediction, such studying and practicing, and such faithfulness of pine and integrity of bamboo. So we usually think all beings are not real things, but he said all beings are real things. But of course, when we see things within this subject-object structure, we don't really see this object. we only see our perception of the object. And this perception of object and object are different. We need to understand this point. Otherwise, we are deceived, even by this kind of teaching. So basically what he's saying is such a form, all beings are such a form, this is the first one, and such a nature. So he defers these first two obtain suchness, and such a body and such a mind. So there's no owner of body and owner or operator of body and mind. This body and mind, and such a world in which this body and mind or five skandhas are living, and such clouds and rain things happening in the nature, and such walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. This means all the activity we do. Such anxiety, joy, anxiety and joy, things happening within our mind, and movement and stillness. Movement is our day-to-day activities, and stillness is, in our case, sitting in the zendo. And such a stuff and fisk. Stuff and fisk. Stuff is, when in ancient times, monks traveling, they always have a staff. And the fisk is fisk? It's a stick with horsehair, and often the doshi or officiant use this.
Whisk.
Okay. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Whisk. This originally, this used to be a kind of a device to chase after the flies when people are meditating. But today it's become a kind of a symbol of a teacher. So this staff and whisk refer to our practice and study with teachers. And such picking up a flower and breaking into a smile refer to Dharma transmission from Shakyamuni to Mahakashyapa. Then Shakyamuni picked up a flower, and then Mahakashyapa smiled. Within this silence, the Dharma is transmitted. This transmission. So such Dharma transmission and prediction. Prediction is when someone allows bodhicitta. The Buddha gave a prediction that this bodhisattva will become a Buddha in the future. So this is a kind of a certificate or guaranteed, bodhisattva. This bodhisattva can be a Buddha. And such studying and practicing, and such faithfulness of pine and the integrity of bamboo. Pine and bamboo are both evergreen. And today, now, our bamboo become brown, but not often, but usually, in Japan at least, or China or Asian countries, bamboo are always green, and pine is the same. So that means, I translate the faithfulness, that means it doesn't change the color. So steadiness. So all those things are true reality. And that is, Dogen said, penetrated. That is the manifestation of Buddhas and ancestors. This kind of interpretation of this expression, shohoji. So instead of, this word expression, I think first used in the Lotus Sutra. And it became a very important expression in Chinese Buddhism and Zen, including Zen. but in India and China, this is always interpreted as true reality of all beings. But in Japan, people start to read all beings are true reality. That means true reality is not hidden, it's revealed, always revealed. And that's why we translate this in this text, translate this expression, all things are the truth in themselves. I'm sorry, it's already 11:10. Let me finish this paragraph. In Zen, a similar expression is a willow is green, a flower is red. This is a very famous phrase in Zen. And this came from, according to a commentary or a dictionary, this phrase came from one of the Sushi's poems. Sushi is a very famous Chinese poet. He was also a Zen practitioner. He was the poet who composed the poem of the sound of valley stream and colors of mountains, and also the poem about Mount Ru. Anyway, so this is very famous poem expression in Zen. That means, willow is green and flowers are red. In this case, this flower means cherry blossom. At least for us Japanese, I'm not sure in China. But in Kyoto, in early April, the cherry blossoms and new leaves of willows appeared around the same time. And often they are planted together. So the color of cherry blossoms and the color of willow leaves are very beautiful, and that is a kind of a symbol of spring. So both are expression of spring, and yet they are each unique. So that is one of the examples of uniqueness and interconnectedness. And all beings express this entire interconnectedness. Both willow and cherry blossom are different. They are unique color and unique shape. And yet they both express the universal spring. That is the idea. So they don't compete each other. They work together. And finally, he said, in short, Buddhism as a religious teaching means manifesting the world of life, this world of life force, in which willows, leaves is green, and cherry blossom are pink or red, and violet is violet, and rose is rose. Each are different, and yet we don't need to evaluate which is better. So the world of life in which a violet blooms as a violet, and a rose as a rose. So this life force is, Fatou Chamrosh wants to say, this life force which allows willow to be green, to have a green leaves, and the energy which allow the cherry tree to bloom beautiful, pink, flowers, is the energy that allow us to live without being, pulled by our individual thinking mind. And yet, we can work diligently, not become lazy. That is what I have to say today about this paragraph. Any question or comments, please?
I'm not sure if it's connected to what you're saying here about the 10 suchnesses, but I once heard a Zen teacher talking about the notion of taiko.
Taiko.
The idea is that, in a sense, that there's someone who has practice or has an understanding that's beyond that of other people. And yet that person might be a taiko for someone else who's even at a further stage of practice. I was wondering if it's sort of related to that number 10 of that.
Number 10?
Yeah, no, number 9 actually. Yes.
Taiko.
Do you
remember where the word from? Taiko.
I don't. I think it has to do with like a spiritual guide, someone who is.
Probably that came from one section of Eihei Shingi. The title in Japanese is Tai Daiko Ho. Tai means when we encounter with Taiko or Daiko. Daiko is Daiko. Dai means large or great, and ko is self. That means self being, great being. This is same as a bodhisattva, but this in this particular usage, this taiko means a senior practitioner. So in that Eihei Shingi is a kind of a regulation written by Dogen. Junior or newcomers need to behave certain way when they encounter with senior practitioners. So yeah, taiko is about when we mature, we can something to offer. Yes, thank you. Please.
So number 9, the recompense. What is the motivation to recompense? Why recompense? Why give to others?
That's a good question because of life force. I mean, even Shakyamuni had hesitation. Why he made decision to stood up and go to the world and teach. That is why he did it. If he didn't, then his life might be easier. But there's no Buddhism today.
Yeah.
So what made Buddha stood up and teach? That is the same question. And what Okumura Roshi is saying, that is the way we live. That is life force. It's so, in my case, if I didn't come to this country and talk about Dogen in English, my life must be much easier to just practice in Japan and study Dharma in Japanese without worrying about English. My life must be much easier. But somehow, when Okumura Roshi asked me to study English and to come to this country, I couldn't say no. Why this? Why I had to? Why I couldn't say no? And Okumura Roshi's answer is that is life force. It's not our calculation, which is easier or better or more profitable to me.
May I offer a reflection from the Western tradition?
Yeah.
So a scholar named Joseph Campbell, he writes about what he calls the hero's journey that he finds. Are you familiar with this? Am I telling you something you already know?
I know the person's name, but I'm not familiar.
So the hero's journey refers to the basic theme of many stories throughout cultures where an individual leaves his or her individual culture, goes on a big adventure with many difficulties, learns important things that he brings back to his culture. So it's not a hero's journey until there's the return to bring the learning to his society or his
So
culture.
it's not an individual journey.
Yes, it's not enough to be an individual journey.
That's why I think we are living within this interconnectedness until we become mature and offer and return to the ground or soil. Our life is not complete. I think.
So I had one other reflection on that, and that is that I can see a cycle in this form, and if there wasn't recompense, the cycle wouldn't continue. It'd go so far and stop.
Right. Yeah. Even if this tree is cut off and become a firewood, then firewood is burned, it becomes ash. Ash return to the ground and help other trees to grow. So nothing is waste. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
You have something to say?
Yeah, I was wondering, sort of was thinking like, it's also sort of a reflection of the karma of the person at that time. Like if they've learned something but not quite wanting to tell people yet or holding it back, that's just basically a reflection of the causes and conditions that they're at at that moment. And at the time when they do recompense or do express that to someone or try to bear those fruit, and that's also a reflection in that they've learned so much they feel like they have to, it just comes out. It's a reflection. I also had a question. So I use this phrase, thinking uses the body and mind, or that's what people tend to think. We've been streaming some of the old talks from 2006, and so I think you had mentioned it before, and I was thinking uses your body and mind. So if that's the wrong way to think of it, what is the right way to think about the relationship between thinking, body, and mind? Does body and mind use thinking, or?
I think that these are not relation with who use which, but thought. Usually we think thought is this I, which think is the owner of this body and mind and operate. So this body and mind is like a car, and this I is the owner and driver. But I don't think there's such a relation between thinking and body and mind. Actually, thinking is a function of our mind. So this is a part of five skandhas. But somehow we reify the thought and reify I or me and put it beyond my body and mind. That is, I think, illusion. But we think that is true. That is a problem. So if we see, thought is a function of our mind. Thought something happening within our mind. Then we don't need to fight against thought, and we can be. Thought is like a baby. If we start to fight against it, then thought become fight back. So, thought is a part of our body and mind. Not our body and mind is owned by our thought. Please.
So when we were talking about recompense, I was considering the concept of compassion.
Yeah.
And wondering if, from the individual level, the description of the motivation to recompense is compassion, and from the true self level, the motivation for recompense is that's what life force does.
Yeah, it's a manifestation of life force. Yeah. Okay, so I talk too much. I'm too long. It's almost 11:30. Thank you.